Hi, this is Armand Mastriani, and I directed He Knows You're Alone.
This is Scott Parker. I wrote He Knows You're Alone.
And of course, the original title to this film was Blood Wedding.
Actually, before that, it was Shriek.
And The Uninvited. And we went down a whole list of titles trying to figure out what it was. Now, this scene is interesting because this is how this film got made. I basically got asked to speak to Edgar Lansbury and Joe Baru, who were the executive producers on this, by George Manassi, who had worked with them before, and he told me they were interested in making a horror movie. And he said, would you like to meet them? And I said, of course. I had written a script before this and just gotten an agent at the William Morris Agency. And so I went up to meet Edgar and Joe and thought it was just going to be an introductory meeting. But they sat there and they said, tell us the story. And so at that point, having nothing to tell them, I related a story that I used to tell when I was in the Boy Scouts, which was about a couple making out in a car in the woods, and she hears a noise, and this was a familiar story that had gone around, and they didn't seem very impressed. So at some point I said, I don't remember, I think I said, and we pulled back, and we're in a theater, and this is on the screen, and they perked up.
Don, is that you?
And then I said, well, the rest of it I got to, I still have to work on. So right away I went and called Scott, who I had met because both of our dads worked in the jewelry business down on Canal Street. And
Right around the corner from each other.
Yeah. And we'd meet for lunch every day and talk about movies. So I said, Scott, what are you doing? You want to write a movie? And he said, sure. So I started to tell him, here's the parameters. Let's talk about it. So the two of us sat down and we kicked around some ideas, and
We came up with a story and pitched it to the producers, and they said, go ahead. And I would guess, 2 weeks later we had a script, and
a draft at least.
A draft of it. You were casting, and
yeah, we started casting, and it was this entire process to answer print was 6 months, which was unheard of. I mean, from writing a script, from an idea to writing a script to delivering an answer print was 6 months. And this happens to be the 25th anniversary of this film, because 25 years ago at this time we were editing it. And I just remember so much about this film because it was my very first film shot on 35 millimeter. I had made some shorts before this and won some awards, but nothing, of this length.
Donnie?
We were supposed to make this film in conjunction with Sam Arkoff at AIP in Houston, Texas, for double the budget. And about a week or so before we started shooting, and there's the reveal, we got a call from Sam Arkoff saying he couldn't do it at this point. So both Edgar Lansbury and Joe Baru said, well, that's it. We can't make the picture. We don't have enough money. And I said, well, why not? Why don't we make it for all we have? He said, what are you talking about? I said, well, we'll shoot this on Staten Island and get our friends and everybody involved, and we'll make it, And I said, wow, I don't know. And at that point, Bob D'Amelia, who was a very dear friend of mine and I'd gone to school with, and we had made some films together in school, was also involved with this, but he also said, let me see what I can do. And he put together a great crew of people. He and George Manassi put together a great crew of people, and we shot this movie in, I think, 15 days.
it was real quick.
It was a down and dirty shoot, we call it.
Well, I remember this scene, you had an argument with the producer, because the script was having the girl go into the bathroom, and the producer said, well, she's got to go to the bathroom into the stall. And you said,
right.
Why do I want to show that have her in the stall?
Yeah.
And obviously the producer had his way.
Well, but no, I cut it very high because I said, this is going to look silly to shoot her sitting on a bowl. It's just not what I want to show. I said, you get the idea of what's going on here. See? Instead of doing a wider shot where you see that, I think it would just break the moment, because it's supposed to happen when you're at your most vulnerable And this is when you're at your most vulnerable. I remember wanting to put this in because I thought, gee, what is it that you really see when you look through, the crack of a door? And basically, I just wanted to create a lot of, mood and moments and not have her see anything beyond that point. The old idea of not knowing what's just around the corner. So we shot this in an abandoned theater, one of the last of the. Now this was 1979, so this was one of the big movie palaces on Staten Island, called the St. George. Had this cavernous lobby and sort of, beneath the main floor they had this gigantic concession area and the bathrooms. And it just provided for a very kind of eerie setting.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Where have you been? This is great. Somebody's following me. Will you watch the movie? But when I was down in the back, come on.
It's interesting that this scene, Scott, was the two directors talked to me about this. One was Martin Scorsese. I walked up to him on the street and said hi, and he recognized my name immediately. He says, "Oh my God, he knows you're alone. The knife in the seat. Oh, I love that. I love that." And the other was Wes Craven, and it's just the idea has been, I guess, repeated. The idea of having somebody in the theater sitting behind you.
I really don't like this. Can we go home? She's gonna get it.
Remember the casting process for this film was rather quick, and we were seeing a lot of the people in Edgar and Joe's office. And I recall the day that I broke for lunch, and I was sitting there by myself, and somebody stuck his head in and said, "Listen, I'm a little early. Should I wait outside?" And I said, no, come on in. And here we go. Famous knife in the seat scene.
You cast him just because of his eyes.
Yeah.
I remember you.
Tom. Well, what happened was he stuck his head in. He said, "Yeah." I said, "Come on and join me." And I offered him half of my sandwich. We started talking.
Okay,
And
do you wanna go home?
I found him tremendously engaging. And I said, "This guy's great. We got to use this guy." Now, he had only done, at that point, some theater, and he wasn't a member of the Screen Actors Guild yet or anything. So I went in and I said to the producers, "We've got to hire this guy." And they said, "Who is he?" And they looked at his resume, and it was kind of thin, And he said, no, forget about him. We don't want him. I said, no, we got to use him. We have to use him. So sure enough, we put him in the film. And a little bit later on, he got a series called Bosom Buddies. And from then on, the rest is history.
It never stopped for him.
It never stopped for him. And he's the sweetest guy today as he was then. I mean, I saw him recently.
He would come in and read after he got his part.
James Rebhorn, yeah.
He would read with all the
Other actors.
as we were trying to cast him.
That's right. And I ran into him recently, and he just gave me a big hug, and he's just a genuinely nice person and a great actor. And this is Louis Arlt.
Weapon went right through the vertebrae, severed the spinal cord, and pierced the heart.
The guy's an animal. The knife went right through the chair.
Well, that shouldn't be too hard to do.
Then Louis came in. He was great, so we used Louis. Paul Gleason. A lot of these actors have gone on, especially, James Rebhorn. You've seen him a lot in a lot of films.
Independence Day.
Yeah.
The Game.
Talented Mr. Ripley.
Well, I just thought you might like to see this one.
And Paul Gleason certainly, too, has done quite a bit.
He did quite a bit before this, too.
But I don't think you could have. Come on. Come on.
This was the time. This film was made. Gerald File, by the way, was the DP of the original Lord of the Flies. And he was recommended to me, and we spoke for a bit, and he came in, and I said, yeah, let's go, let's do this. And he was great. He was a lot of fun to work with. I mean, we didn't have a lot of money to make this film, and we had very limited use of equipment. Sometimes the old wheelchair worked for the dolly, and sometimes we, just handheld it, But
Thank you, sweetheart.
it's not that important, I guess, the tools you use to make it. It's how you make it and the story you have to tell. I guess you objected to having your name over the body once.
Yeah,
I remember you
that-
said to
that-
me, how come you put me over the corpse?
Was it done intentionally?
No.
All right, Len.
I remember when we finished shooting this scene, we all walked home with bags of candy that
That's
were in the
right.
candy counter there.
Oh, wait. Don't jump to any conclusions. I mean, it might be a coincidence.
Coincidence?
Yeah.
No, Frank, he's back. He's giving me a second chance. He's giving me a second chance.
We were both fans of the horror genre. I mean,
Yeah,
Scott-
I always like that. I always like those movies. And it lends itself to a low budget as opposed to some other movies, which is more difficult.
But I remember, Scott, when we were putting this together and creating the story, you kept saying to me, like, what are the things that scare us? And what are the things that we could set in a kind of environment that's not scary? Just to contradict the old adage of being in a dark room and sensing that. I mean, yes, that happens in here, but we have a lot of very scary scenes that happen in daylight and
Right.
happen like in an ice cream parlor, and we're a place filled with people, and so we played around with a lot of that, and I think it was very successful. I do remember watching this film and having been so close to it through the making of it and the editing of it, that when we screened it at the Festival Theater in Manhattan for an audience just to see the reactions, I went during the day to watch it through to make sure the sound was okay, and I sat there totally unimpressed with it and totally thinking, wow, my career is over. I made this movie. It's not scary. It's not. And then about 5 hours later, sitting with an audience packed with people, screaming and yelling and stamping their feet and it was just an amazing rush. And then MGM bought this film. I'll talk a little bit about that later, but they had some screenings, and they had flown me out to Los Angeles, and I was there for some of the screenings in theaters in Westwood and Hollywood, and again, there were people screaming and yelling, and I remember one woman particularly come running up the aisle, and then a few seconds later, I see someone who I recognized come running up too, and it was Richard Pryor. And he was in the doorway watching it. He was going, "Oh, you got to watch this. You got to see this." And she's going, "I don't want to watch this. I can't stand this movie. It's so scary. I don't." And so I walked over and I said, "Do you like the film?" And he said, "Yeah, it's great." I said, "Great. I made it." And he goes, "Hey, come here. I want you to meet this guy. He made the film." I thought she was going to kill me, but it was certainly a compliment.
I was only kidding. Of course, I'm going to miss you. I love you.
It's Caitlin O'Heaney. She did a few things after this. She had a TV series. Was in some movies.
That's right.
Are you going to miss me?
That was the last person cast, I believe. I mean, the last
Yeah,
lead
because
role.
we were looking at several people for this role.
Oh, it's so exciting.
A bit about making this film and finishing it. What happened was we cut the film and finished the film sometime around March, I believe.
Just what are you going to do?
March, wasn't it? It was just before the Cannes Film Festival, about 2 weeks before.
I remember we finished by Christmas shooting. I don't know.
Shooting, but I mean the editing.
Right.
And usually what an independent producer does, with a film, with an independent film, is he tries to get it set up someplace or sold to a distributor to get, reimbursed for the negative cost and hopefully put the film out and get some success with it. Well, Edgar and Joe took out an ad in Variety, and it said "Blood Wedding," available for screening at Cannes, and they listed their telephone numbers and all that. And interestingly enough, they got a couple telephone calls from the the studios, and they said, look, it's 2 weeks before the festival. Why don't you guys show it to us now? And, we'll look at it here. So they figured, well, why not? So they together took the print out. They went to Los Angeles, and I believe they arrived. They went on a Friday, and I believe 20th Century Fox was the first to see it, or was supposed to see it on that day, but they canceled. And they said, oh, wow, we're going to waste a day here, so why don't we call the next guy who's going to see it Monday, and that was MGM. And what happened was MGM said, yeah, we have an opening, bring it over. So they delivered the print to the studio, and they said, we'll be back to pick it up at 3 o'clock. Well, they went back at 3 o'clock, and sure enough, they snuck into the screening room, and the film was just starting, or had just started, and it was packed with people. And at the end of that, they sat through it. The executives who were watching the film were really impressed with it, and they were saying, wow, this is great, it's so scary, my God, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden they stopped and they said, excuse me, who are you guys? And they said, we're the producers. They said, oh, you don't belong here. We'll get in touch with you. They said, well, we want the print. And they said, no, we'll go back to your hotel, we'll call you later this evening. So net, they got a telephone call and said David Beagleman had just taken over MGM at the time, and they said, look, we want to buy the picture, and we don't want you showing it to anyone else because we don't want to be in a bidding situation. So the rest is happened very quickly. The deal was made. Bob DeMille at the time was in New York, and he was on the phone with them, and they were structuring the deal with MGM, and I remember at the time getting all this information because it was happening so quickly, and we knew we had a film sold right away, which is unheard of, and I think we were all blessed by that, I think.
I just interrupt you for a moment. That Steve James there, the police officer was questioning.
Yeah, with the blue jacket.
Yeah, he had done, after this, a bunch of movies, American Ninja movies. He was also in Weekend at Bernie's, too, Part 2. And he passed away a couple of years ago, I think. He had cancer. I had worked with him at ICM, and we had become friends, and we cast him in that part.
And he also did the stunts for us in this film.
That's right.
And it's interesting, when you look at this, there's a lot of people that passed away. Joe Baru,
right.
Tom Rolfing.
Mm-hmm.
And Elizabeth Kemp with the red skirt there. It was in the very next film that I did, which was called The Killing Hour. And now she's at the Actors Studio. She's teaching. And when they brought Tom Hanks in to speak in front of the group, she was sitting in the front row, and is it James Lipton? James Lipton. James Lipton pointed out, he said, there's someone here from your first film. And Tom looked around, he said, who? And she kind of waved at him, and it was a big moment for him. He said, oh, my God. And then, of course, later on when they gave Tom his honorary, this Lifetime Achievement Award, they announced, they said, we have the clip from your very first film. I think it was Steve Martin who introduced it.
Right.
And they showed the clip of him at the amusement park, which is going to come up in a little while.
Willpower. You know, Phil doesn't even want me to have a career. He's hinting I should quit school.
This was a film where at times we had to do a lot of second unit shooting just to get the film done. So Bob DeMille and myself would go out with a camera at nights and sit in a car and do shots of pass-bys. And I said, we didn't have any kind of equipment, so I took a board from the backyard, and put it across the seat, the back seat to the front seat, and we set the camera on it, and we shot those shots like that, and some of the chase sequences in this.
Well, it's a chance to ace philosophy this weekend. Oh, it's too bad they don't give anything higher than an A, like a double A.
When MGM finally, when they bought the film, they started screening it for some of the executives and other studios just to make an announcement. And Tom got his job through that, and I got my very next job by having William Friedkin had seen the film, and I got a call from Warner Brothers and said, William Friedkin wants to meet you. I went over to meet with him, and he told me how much he had liked the film, and he thought it was very scary, and he ended up developing my next movie, which was called The Killing Hour. So good things came from this. Now, this is James Rebhorn, who plays the professor, who's been having an affair with one of the characters here. And
they almost cast Harry Reams in that part. They interviewed Harry Reams for that part, but they decided to go in a different direction.
Harry Reams. For those of you who don't know who that is, he was a big porn star.
And again, another soap star they had set to play the role, but he couldn't get out of the soap to do it.
We thought so.
A lot of the locations you're seeing, or actually the whole film was shot on Staten Island. And these are locations that Bob D'Amelio was able to just go in out of friendship to people and say, we're going to use their dance studio. And they would say, oh, yeah, come on in, shoot, you know. So a lot of these things we were getting for free and helped us along. You'll see a lot of...
some of the writing was based on what locations he was able to get.
That's right. You had to do some quick rewrites at night to change things.
Study hard.
It's unusual for a writer to be on the set all the time, and that I had that advantage of being there from day one, actually being in some of the casting sessions, too.
You know, it's also very good because as a writer, you see the problems that come up in making a film, and there's every day-to-day thing you see. You know, like we're set up to shoot a scene, and not everything that we intended to be there is there, or certain things that we hadn't accounted for.
And you need a quick rewrite.
And we need quick rewrites, yeah. Or we block the scene and we suddenly realize, the actors realize that this isn't working, and we need a fix to the dialogue. You know, and we do that. And so it's an advantage when you have a writer like Scott who's quick and makes decisions very quickly, and doesn't stand on ceremony when changes have to be made. A lot of the people in the background are the people that were walking by, and, you know, this guy was an extra, I'm sure, that we hired. And, you know, again, here, I mean, this is a store and that we just went in and we said, we need to tap into your TVs. So everybody was very giving. The only way to make this film for that kind of money.
That was never a problem. We did have a discussion about the motive for the killer's murdering spree, but never a question on showing him.
The thing is, we did keep it minimal because we felt that, you know, his dark, imposing figure was always going to be more frightening than just to settle on him for any length of time. But to just basically get glimpses of him here and there, and you just feel his presence all the time.
That one.
Sugar cone?
As you will here.
1 or 2 scoops.
I mean, here's an ice cream store. It's colorful. There's a lot of people. It's a busy day outside.
I think I'm gonna have another, aren't you? Oh, delicious. Try the sprinkles. Try some.
George Norris was the editor of this film, and he had worked on a few other films with Edgar Lansbury and Joe Baru, and we cut this totally on film. I mean, today everything's done on an Avid, but, you know, it was kind of the pace at which we were working and cutting on the old moviolas. It was amazing.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And then when you watch this as a work print, you know, we used to screen it to see if the picture worked. There were so many splices in it that you were never quite sure as to, like, oh, gee, did I make the right cut or didn't I make the right cut? And here's Darren Scardino, who is now directing today, too. He's a very fine director.
Now I'll probably have to give it to one of the stiffs at work.
I thought somebody was following me.
Probably one of Phil's watchdogs. Will you look at my shirt?
It'll come out, Marvin.
It won't. This stuff stains.
The interesting thing is that when MGM bought this film, and it was originally, as I said, called Blood Wedding, and we had done our mix, sound mix, and color timing and all that in New York, they felt that it was it would be best for them to do it over at the studio. So they brought us all back out, And we did another mix at the MGM studios, did a color timing there, and made some trims in the film here and there. And then they decided we should shoot a trailer for this film. So the actors came back out. They brought the actors out, and they shot additional scenes for just a trailer. Like, I remember them saying, you know, every girl is frightened the night before her wedding, but this time there's good reason. And they took Caitlin and they set her in front of a vanity, and she's brushing her hair. And she looks into the mirror, and suddenly a hand breaks through the mirror and comes out to grab her. They wanted to shoot these little shock cuts to use for TV spots and stuff. Not that they would be in the film, but it was amazing that some of that ended up costing more than the film did. I mean, just the production of them building these sets and setting up, bringing the actors out and putting us all up. You know, in the long run, there was a great deal of money spent there.
Yeah, they got me on days now. The regular guy died. I gave him our best freezer.
And the, you know, the idea of mixing at a big studio like that and, you know, taking all the time we wanted was kind of new to me. I was always on the, you know, the low budget track, you know, making independent films and shorts and things like that. And scrape money together. Suddenly we were in the big time, and we're getting paid to do it, getting per diem, and cars, and being taken back and forth to the studio. They put us at the Beverly Hills Hotel. It's the royal treatment.
Never invited me to Beverly Hills Hotel.
Well, that's because you lived in California.
You're too good for Phil, Amy. Look, marry me. Phil's weird. He's got insanity in his family. He's a closet.
It was interesting while we were doing that re-edit and mix and all at MGM. There was another director editing his film under an armed guard. You know, all the editing bays were taken up by Michael Cimino, and he was cutting Heaven's Gate, and he wouldn't allow any of the studio executives to come in to see the cut. And it was a big thing at that time because everyone was talking about how this film was going to turn out. And later on, I got to see it in Manhattan. I went to the first screening.
Is it worth it?
Also, at this time, there was another film called Fame that was coming out.
Getting married.
And Can't Stop the Music. I remember, and I also remember going at night after I'd finished in the editing room. There was always a screening at MGM that they were showing another film. So it was an experience, and that was 25 years ago.
You have a good memory for 25 years ago.
It's about all I have right now.
Ralph?
Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. Come here. Hey.
I went to NYU Film School. I worked for ICM for a while.
I'm sorry.
Then I worked as a production assistant on Semi-Tough, actually, and was in Los Angeles when the movie finished and started writing, and sold the script before this one. And then Armin called me about this.
There's just one more.
I started making 8mm movies with all my friends, and we used to shoot in my backyard, and we used to make little films, and I'd cut them together and then project them and show them to everyone, and basically that's what I did. I never really went to film school. I went to City University, Staten Island Community College, and Richmond College, and at those colleges I was instrumental in starting a film program because I thought it would be nice to have a film club. And while I was there, we put together some films, and we shot the first 70-minute film written like a sort of a narrative that I wrote and made that there. And then, of course, I made several shorts, and some of those shorts got entered into festivals. One that I did later on with Bob D'Amelio was a film called The Private Worlds of Sophie and Bernie Schwartz, and it was a sort of a semi-comedy about an elderly couple and who have a very active fantasy life. And that film got entered into a festival, and the judge was Otto Preminger. And he stopped after he saw that film and he said, I don't want to see any more films. This is the winner. And I want to meet the filmmaker. And it was very, very exciting for me because, here I go up to Columbia Studios in Manhattan and I meet Otto Preminger, and he loved the film, and he said to me, he says, I want to introduce you to everybody. And he did. He took me around and introduced me to all the people in this, United Artists, Columbia Pictures, Paramount. And of course, everyone said to me, this is great, but we're not in the business of making shorts. We, come to us with a script. So that's when I had the idea to get a story together. It was basically about growing up in Brooklyn. And I wrote this script with a Franciscan monk, a friend of mine, Brother Jonathan. We wrote a script called Rapallo and Sons about an Italian family in Brooklyn. And it got optioned by Edgar Sherrick. And it was going to be directed by Ivan Passer. And that's how I met George Manassi, who introduced me to Edgar Lansbury and Joe Beru. So it was, one step after another. And everyone has a different story and how they get started. A lot of times I go and I speak to film students and they all ask, how do you get started? And how do you get your first job? Well, I think persistence, and I think, believing in yourself, not giving up, and doing what you do best, making the films, no matter whatever it takes to make a film, make it, and hopefully it'll get seen. And you'll get recognized.
Networking is important. Just your story. You met somebody who introduced you to somebody else.
Sure. That is very, very helpful. And another great thing was that when they were shooting The Godfather on Staten Island, I cut class and I went up and snuck onto the set and walked up there and I got a hold of Francis Coppola and I said, do you mind if I watch? I'm making my own films and I would love to just stay here and watch you guys work. And he said, not at all. He turned around and then walked 5 feet away and somebody grabbed me and said, you're not allowed here. And Coppola turned around and said, he's with me. And for the next 3 days, I sat next to him watching him direct the movie. And it was fantastic. And I do that now too. I mean, I think it's very good to help people, and there's not a lot of people get chances in this business. So usually when I'm shooting a film, I open up my set to interns and film students and people who want to become, assistants. And I think one of the more interesting things was at this time, pictures like Friday the 13th were coming out, which were very graphic. And Bill Lustig, in fact, a friend of mine, made Maniac. And again, it was very graphic. And this film, our choice was to stay away from all that and just...
But some of the reviews said it was gory.
They said
there was a lot of blood, but it's only implied in most places.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, you don't really see very much in this. And there isn't a lot of blood.
There's a little bit. The producers, again, demanded some. So
but we were successful in... There's a little blood now. You're going to see Christ's foot bleeding. So, but the idea of trying to not make it gore but scary is what we went after here. I think to try to make this a scary film and just be a little different than Friday the 13th. And actually, we came out simultaneously. I think they came out
a little bit before us.
Just a little bit before us, yeah. Again, all these things, are play on her mind, the character's mind, as opposed to, is this really happening?
Amy.
Hello, Father.
Is this what...
I look at this film now, and I see everything I would do differently.
Same thing.
It's just amazing.
If I ever remember, I'm going to have to call up...
Page 1 rewrite if I had to do it again.
Yeah. I mean, I'd just be a lot more fluid with the camera, I think. And the actor's a lot less obvious. and scenes, you know.
Yes.
Well, what are you going to do?
No, I think that's quite enough.
Amy, are you still having second thoughts?
It's funny how many people, even in Europe, when I went to the Science Fiction Festival and Science Fiction and Horror Festival in Paris, I was invited with one of my films, Cameron's Closet. And so many people came up to me with the French poster from this film to sign it because they loved it. They just, you know, and it's very ingratiating to know the film touched people all over the world.
You trying to tell me something, Father?
Me? No, I don't meddle. I just want you to be sure.
A lot of people confuse this movie because of its title with When a Stranger Calls.
I get that all the time.
The minute I say He Knows You're Alone, oh, that's the one with the telephone and the babysitter, and I said, no, not that one. And interestingly enough, when this film was released, Columbia re-released When a Stranger Calls, and in one theater it was showing side by side, so the marquee read, When a Stranger Calls, the next marquee read, He Knows You're Alone. So it looked like one big movie.
Who actually came up with the title?
Ira Teller, I think his name was. He was the marketing guy from MGM. I mean, they came up with several titles, but they came to me and they said, well, what do you think of this title, He Knows You're Alone? And I said, well, to me, it's like the tagline to the stalker or something, you know, he knows you're alone, watch out because he knows you're alone. And they said, well, you know, we're testing it. It seems to be very positive, you know, it's getting a lot of reaction because people think, you know, he knows you're alone, evokes a kind of scary thought. But I just felt, well, initially it was Blood Wedding, Shriek, The Uninvited, Shock.
There were a couple others I can't remember anymore.
It's funny, I got a note from Tom Hanks about a year or two ago, and he said, Dear Armand, I remember more about He Knows You're Alone, and in parentheses, he listed all the other titles that we had gone through, because I remember questioning him every day, Tom, did you come up with a new title? Than other films that I've worked on. So it was a very nice note from him. Dana Barron.
National Lampoon's Vacation.
Yep. People grow up. Again, these are all homes of friends of ours on Staten Island that they were so generous. And I remember it being really cold.
Very cold.
When we shot this. It was just before Christmas. Yes, actually, we finished a week before Christmas.
Mm-hmm. A couple of days, I remember.
Yeah, and it was absolutely freezing.
I don't think there was there was some snow, but not too much.
Yeah, but there was a lot of night shooting in this, so.
This guy kills brides, young brides. All right, Frank, give me the
This was a
rest.
15-day shoot. And down and dirty, and some of 12 to 14-hour days.
That's him. I'm on my way.
The police station was shot at the hospital where we shot the morgue.
Right.
Abandoned.
Well, yeah, we should talk a little bit about that when that comes on, because that was an adventure on its own.
I'm looking at trouble here, Len. You know what I'm saying?
The music was done by Alexander Peskanoff and Mark Peskanoff, two and the brothers who were recommended by Nan Perlman, who was one of the producers on the film also. And they did a nice job for us here.
36 hours.
Thanks, Frank. Tell him not to touch anything. Not a damn thing.
What's going on here? Sit down.
These locations were basically in buildings that had been closed down and were about to be condemned, so there was absolutely no heat.
Bride was killed.
And we brought in what space heaters we could get, so these guys are sitting here and it's freezing cold. And the complex in where we shot the morgue was a...
Seaview Hospital.
Seaview Hospital was a tuberculosis clinic, and it also was closed down. And what it had underneath were these tunnels that interconnected where I guess they used to take the bodies and they used to
roll them to the morgue, right?
Yeah.
Seen Marvin around lately?
Pretty creepy.
Seen him around.
We certainly utilized that.
can't get
Tom
rid
is
of
going to
the
make
guy.
his appearance pretty soon
The closer
here.
he gets to my wedding, the bigger pain he gets to be.
Tell him to get lost.
I can't. I like him.
Maybe you should marry him instead of Phil.
And spend the rest of my life joking about dead bodies? No, thank you.
Oh, you know,
I don't recall if the actors had to provide their own wardrobe or not, but, best bets was that they did.
Yeah, I'm guessing they did,
So why don't you let him pick you up?
with maybe some minor changes.
Why not?
Yeah, I mean, this was really down and dirty. This was everybody, bring your own wine, bring your glasses. Hey, Mom, you have this. Can we borrow that?
Okay, I will.
That's how we made this film.
So here's to you and the jogger.
I remember we shot some part of this sequence coming up in the bedroom, and
This is the house that was supposed to be demolished, right?
correct. And the scene where he shot up in the bedroom was we had some film damage, and we had to go back, and we couldn't get back in this house because by the time we left it, they had started to demolish it or something like that. We just couldn't get back into it. So we ended up building a piece of the bedroom at Damien's Hofbräu, which was who catered The Godfather, which is a restaurant. So you can imagine, we cleared a certain section of this restaurant because Bob DeMille, again, had good connections with these people. And we went into this restaurant and built a portion of a bedroom. So you can imagine people who were coming there to dinner to look over, and they'd see this bed in the middle of the floor and part of the back of the bedroom set, wondering what officially was going to happen there.
They had a wedding that night, too.
Yes. And we had to be out at a certain time. They had to disassemble the set.
I think the wedding started a little late.
Thank God.
Joyce! Where are you? I don't like the dark, Joyce.
You come any closer and I'll jump.
We've been playing around for an hour.
Oh, poor Carl.
Again, this was an idea to Scott had to play with,
If you don't stop fooling around.
this the
You know what I mean.
tension of having the killer so close. Meanwhile, contrasting it by what's going on inside the room. Outside, the threat is so big, and she's threatening to jump out the window.
No, it's not.
That's easy for you to say. I'm the one on the bottom.
This is Patsy Pease.
I think she did some soap work after this
Yeah.
for a while.
I got you now. What are you gonna do? Huh? What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do, huh?
God, it's spooky out here.
Oh, yeah? I'm gonna leave you out there a little longer. Yeah? What are you gonna do now, huh? You gonna cut it out? Yeah. You promise? Promise? Promise?
I think that the rules of the horror movies, today are fairly well, set. At this point, there's a lot of experimentation going on. I think we were still saying, let's see what we can do here to make it scary.
There's a couple of spots where I think we played with it. One being the police officer, which you set up as the hero who doesn't become the hero.
Right.
Things like that, but not too much.
Oh, that hurt.
We also had to do a scene in this film to please that background, those three windows and the bed and part of the carpeting is what had to be built in the restaurant. I'll point out those shots when they come on. But later on you'll see a scene, the obligatory nude scene that we had to add to appease the producers.
Yes. Wasn't in the script.
No. So we made a little homage to Alfred Hitchcock. Put her in the shower. Again, this is your traditional so-called scary scene because the lights go out and you're alone in a dark house and you separate the two people.
Did you hear something?
No,
No, maybe it's your wife.
she won't be back until Monday.
Isn't there a line earlier in the beginning? Maybe it's your boyfriend in the car?
Yes, I think so.
Stop it, Carl.
Oh, brother.
What happened to the light?
That was probably just a fuse. Come on.
You go see what it is.
I don't want to go see what it is.
Go check it out.
It's dark out there.
Listen, brave one. You ain't getting nothing until the lights get back on.
This is like one of the rules in Scream. You have sex and
pay for it.
Pay for it.
Shit. You better be here when I get back.
So now the close-ups that we're going to see back on her were shot in that set that I talked about. Again, this was interesting because we shot this with just the light from the Bic lighter. Gerald File said, "Let's go for it," and I said, "Yeah, let's go for it." So we're going to see how much latitude we had on the film. See, this was shot. That was shot in the restaurant, in the catering hall. Of course, she hears someone coming in. The old heartbeat. Do people really do that when they're scared? I guess I would freeze now. I'd stay very still. I wouldn't pull the blankets up around me. I don't know. I just wouldn't make any noise at all.
Everybody would react differently.
Well, it's interesting. You know, as a director, you kind of make the movie in your head.
That's it.
And try to share those images with the actors and try to give them information so that they can create their character and base their character on, you know. And
what percentage do you think you got of what was in your head to what's on the screen?
Oh, gee, you're asking me a question. You know, a lot of it is like, you know, what would you do in this situation? How would you behave? I mean, the more freedom you can give the actor, the better it is. Because, see, I think this is back in this is the set. You know, the more freedom you give the actor, the better the performance is going to be because...
Right.
But as long as you're on the same page and as long as the emotional arc of the character is where it's got to go. Otherwise, you know, you can have them go off on a tangent and it's not going to fit with the rest of the film.
What did you use to get the sound of the knife? Do you remember?
I did. Yeah, I think they were stabbing some lettuce or something like that.
Who is it?
The boogeyman.
I do remember shooting so late one night that the neighbors were complaining that we had lights shining into the windows. We were there till like 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning. People were coming out on the street saying, "Please, we're trying to sleep."
Not 7 o'clock in the morning?
There you go, Sid. It's your new home. Give him room, you guys.
Making independent films is difficult for most people because, you know, it is trying to assemble the financing to shoot your film, get the equipment and once I think it's easy to get the actors because everybody wants to work.
Well, in this case, the financing wasn't that difficult.
No.
But that's not usually the case.
Well, that's because Edgar and Joe had made a couple of films before this. They made a film called Squirm and Blue Sunshine by Jeff Lieberman. And this was, I think, their third. No, they actually were. See, they were very successful Broadway producers. Godspell,
Right.
Magic Show, American Buffalo. And then they also produced the movie Godspell and The Wild Party. I mean, they had some credits to their list.
She only wants me for my...
But this was the first film that got that had a major distributing it, other than Godspell, which was already pre-bought by Columbia.
So tell me, is it true what I've been hearing on campus?
What have you been hearing on campus?
That you've dumped Phil?
You don't give
See, I guess it's essential in these movies is to create
January 5th,
some kind of character that people can empathize with. Otherwise, if you make a film that's all action or all horror or all assault on people, you don't know the people. You really don't have any feelings for them. So, I mean, this was an attempt to make us care about these characters and make them real and make them have the problems that most of us can identify with, and then drop into their lives this horror.
Hopefully you'll care about them when they're in danger.
Would you like some coffee?
No, not for me. It's no
And
good
of course,
for
there's a nice motif setting up the fish tank and the fact that he brings her fish every time he comes to visit her, and she's got 1,000 fish in there. And then to pay it off later on. See, again, seeing this guy in bright sunlight, it's still disconcerting. It's unnerving because you don't expect somebody to be staring at you.
What?
It's quite frightening to be, say, even sleeping on your couch at night and then to wake up and just look up and have somebody staring at you right through the window. I think would pretty well unnerve a lot of people.
He's gone.
Who's gone?
That man.
What man?
That man who's been following me. He's gone.
Amy,
Well, some of these houses were pretty old, and the quarters were very tight with all the lights and the crew. It was a tight squeeze around these places.
They were incredibly tight because, you don't have room to move around or put lights or anything. And, you deal with the space as it is. So you couldn't really move the camera too much because you'd be bunking into stuff. And so you pretty much had to do it in cuts. I mean, today when I work on a stage, it's such a luxury to pull the wall out and be able to dolly around things and, block the film differently.
I didn't see anybody.
I'm scared, Marvin.
Hey, if I'd known it was this easy, I
Interesting.
would have scared you a long time ago.
And when you direct a film and you block it and you shoot it, is the choices you make in wide angle, medium, or close up. And in this, there were times where we wanted to just pull back and view the scene and just show how vulnerable these people are. I mean, close-ups generally give you a feeling of, security and all, but sometimes it doesn't. If you're in an environment that's frightening, you don't know what's on the other edge of the frame.
Oh. Are you making coffee?
Yeah.
Good, I need it. We're not gonna run today, are we?
Oh, yeah, of course we are. You've got to meet that friend of yours.
Oh, yeah. I'll probably throw up all over him.
Now they're referring to Tom Hanks's introduction, which is going to come up very shortly.
Hey, Marvin. I think I ate too much cake last night.
And the places that we shot this jogging sequence, which was going to come up, was a place called High Rock. And it was a part of the green belt of Staten Island.
That's what everybody says.
And Staten Island is amazing because many films have been shot there. The Godfather, naturally, but a film, Splendor in the Grass, with Natalie Wood and Warren Beatty, was shot there. And many people think it's Kansas, but it isn't. It's Staten Island. There's farmland. There's
Still?
Yeah,
They're still filming?
still, in sections of Staten Island. But of course now, Staten Island has really, that was in the 60s. Staten Island has really built up because many people live there. And there was no, the only way to get to Staten Island at the time was the ferry. And then they built the Verrazano Bridge. Yeah. And once they built the bridge, there was a tremendous influx of people coming in, wanting to have houses out there. And before that, Staten Island was basically an island where people went to, use it as a summer resort. There were bungalows on the beach, and that's it. And it does have the highest point on the East Coast, Toad Hill. It's one of the highest elevations right along the east coast.
Look, I'd like to know what the hell's going on around here. I got the guys.
This again, this bridal shop just gave us the place to use. And it was interesting because people would come around with their cameras and take pictures and say, "Ooh, look, this is where they're making the movie."
Most of the actors came in on the ferry, right?
Yeah. Yeah, because they were all coming from Manhattan.
Look,
the thing about having people die with their eyes open, they don't allow that on television. When you make a television movie, they want you to make sure it's too disturbing to watch people, have people with their eyes open.
They want to know what's going on.
Take care of that.
Wisconsin.
I think that we went into this film making it as an R-rated film because it appealed to the same audience that was appealing that Friday the 13th and Halloween and some of the other films all appealed to, and it was basically an R-rated, audience. I don't think you'd want to show this to.
We had the
really young kids.
opposite problem of the producers telling us to add more gore, add more nudity.
Amy Jensen.
Those guys are always down my throat.
Listen.
The name's Thompson.
Thompson. Anybody else work here?
Yeah, the dead guy's wife.
Find her. She might be able to help.
And what are you gonna be doing?
Sleeping. I had a long drive.
He's a big help.
1980 was the time when a lot of these films were being released. I mean, Terror Train and Don't Go Into the Basement, and quite a few of the horror films were coming out at that point.
Well, that's probably why they did this one too, is because they wanted to capitalize on they were doing well at the box office.
Right, and the only really independent film you could make at that point would be something that a major would not be making. See, it's not advantageous for an independent filmmaker to try to make a film that is just a straight comedy or just a straight drama, because number one, you're not going to have the star power that the studios would have. So what do you lean on? You lean on some kind of controversial material or a horror film or something that's going to stand out and not try to compete with a major film. Like, you imagine trying to do a big action movie, with no money. I mean, what are you going to get? And this is the introduction of Tom Hanks.
I'm too tired to scream from the pain you just caused me.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, don't be. I stretched out an extra.
He actually had a larger part that was cut back before he was even cast.
I think we also shot some more footage with him in Blood Wedding. I think that there might be a little bit more.
I know he was supposed to get killed originally.
Yep.
And that was changed.
Yeah, we liked him too much. We didn't want to kill him. Again, this is not Steadicam or anything like this. This is somebody running with a camera. And, look, I guess, it tells a story. It just gives you that kind of sense that somebody's following her. So sometimes, with all the most sophisticated equipment in the world, you can't You know, if you don't have a story to tell, it doesn't help. No. How many times have you heard people come out of a theater saying, I love the crane shot, or I love the Steadicam shot they did? You know, filmmakers might do that, but the average people go and say, either it was a good movie or it was a terrible movie.
Right.
You know, they react to the story, they react to the performances. I think that when you're making a film, for me at least, every film I make is a new experience. I don't try to rely on stuff that I've done, or I don't try to play it safe. I always like to experiment and see what I can do to keep it interesting. And the process is always interesting for me because you're always working with different people, a whole different set of circumstances and different storyline and different locations. So I try to I try to challenge myself and say, all right, what's another way to say this? Not the same way that I've said it, you know, and that's what.
Well, this was a great learning experience for me because I'm usually in an office writing by myself. Here I was on the set every day. I actually saw how these things were put together, and I learned a lot about filmmaking just being there.
And that's why I say I also like to open the set up to have a lot of interns and a lot of film students come on and be part of the experience, because watching a film being made is better than any book you can read about filmmaking, because you're there and you're experiencing the day-to-day problems.
This was an amusement park on Staten Island, a small amusement park, I remember.
Too bad they don't have a roller coaster.
Thank God for a small thing.
Don't you like to be stared at?
No.
Most people do, actually. I mean, like to be scared.
This is the famous shot they keep using for Tom.
This is what they showed on the AFI tribute.
Tribute, yeah.
I want to go on that next.
And somewhere around here, you had a couple of us do background work. You put us on rides.
That's right.
And you put me on a tilt-a-whirl and forgot about us. 15, 20 minutes later, you sent the AD to come over and shut the ride off. The rest of the day, I was sick. I was down. And to this day, I can't see a merry-go-round without getting sick.
See, but I couldn't be a parent to everyone that day. It was enough for me to take care of the actors.
All you had to do is say, shut it off.
Well, you know what? It was background, and the thing was turning, and we left it on. This was a bit of Tom's improvisational stuff, like give me a goober and stuff. He just added things.
Oh, guilt. Floyd would have a field day with that.
You see, now you have a professional opinion.
Thank you.
Is he a big man?
Let's just forget about it, okay?
No. Answer my question. Is he a big man?
Yes.
Definitely sexual.
Let's just change the subject, all right?
Have you seen this man while you were with us?
No.
And you won't. The hallucination will only manifest itself when you're alone.
How far are you in psych?
Psych 1. Introduction to Psychology.
An expert.
Want a goober?
This was a closed-down amusement park, and again, Bob D'Amelia, who knows everybody, just call Bob. No, he made all these arrangements, and along with George Manassi, planned it around this place. But it was freezing cold. I mean, you could see people just in sweaters and things. And I'm actually in one of these shots someplace, leaning up against the railing, and it was very cold. There I was, but I went by so fast.
Come on.
haven't got a picture yet. All right, I'm going to sell you a picture, all right? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Oh.
Have a good time.
Hey, you got any change?
Are you serious? Huh? No, all I have is 5.
At this point, the producer had said, give Tom something to do. So I said, you don't have money to pay for anything.
Right.
So Tom just ad-libbed the scene there with Elizabeth.
The scene coming up, I remember we shot it in inside this. What was it called? The ride, the dark.
Funhouse, or
It was a fun house, but anyway, we shot it and basically rolled the cars. We had 2 PAs rolling the cars toward us, and over again to just get the shots. And then we did a ride through it, but we put real characters in there as opposed to the silly ones that they had. This is the scene. I forgot what this place was called.
that's it for Tom Hanks, too. I don't think he makes another appearance.
I don't think. Please, come on. Is this a ride?
All right, come on.
It's a swan song.
Well, just kind of disappears, probably because originally he was meant to be
He was
killed.
meant to be killed, yeah. We liked him too much. We didn't want to kill him.
Is that the reason?
Yeah. No. So again, once we went in, it was total darkness. Some of this was shot in a studio. See, like these things, these cutaways. And this was a handheld camera. We were moving up against them, and the car was being pushed because there was no way to light this thing. And we'd light little sections of it like that. See, most of the characters in these things don't really walk up to you. They're just like, they were pretty lame.
Boy, that was great. Let's do it again.
No, come on.
Come on.
Move. See, I mean, things that you change today, you know.
The movie would probably be 25 minutes shorter.
Well, the idea was, why would she pause to say, gee, did I really see that or not? She'd get the hell out of there.
Schaefer? Is that what it says?
I think that was Schaefer beer, yeah. These are the guys away on their bachelor party. They're supposed to be up at a cabin someplace, but this was shot in somebody's living room.
Amy, answer the phone.
All the cars we used in the film some were borrowed, some were stolen. No. But also, again, Bob had some relationship with Ford, Island Ford, and they gave us some of the cars.
I don't like Phil. Marry Marvin.
Great deal of this movie is
He makes me laugh and he helps me with my
it's the reason it was made was responsible to Bob because he really did a great job and gathering all his resources, and
He brought it in for an amazingly low price
Yeah.
at that time. Called in a lot of favors.
We saved you a burger.
Oh, no, thanks. Elliot's taking me out to dinner tonight.
Oh.
Why don't you run upstairs and get your knapsack? It's almost time for me to take you to that party.
Oh, okay.
if we had done this for twice the budget, how much more different this would have been. I mean, maybe we would have spent some more time on the shots and
the amusement park might have been a little bit bigger.
A little bit bigger and all, but when you look at it, I think, and for the time, at the time, it worked.
Amy, are you
So,
sure this is the same?
we were successful in that sense. It achieved what it set out to do, and you know, you wondered, would all that extra money have done anything else? Would it have given you a better movie? And I really don't.
I don't think so. No, that would have been in Houston, right?
Yeah, we would have shot this whole thing in Houston.
Would have been a very different movie.
Different movie. You know, here at least I was familiar with all these surroundings. I knew the people. I knew the areas we were shooting in, and you know, it would have been a little bit different there. We would have probably ended up paying for the locations, so everything would have been pretty much the same. This is, of course, we set up the knife rack. So I gave her some business to do there. She hears someone coming in.
You can forget something?
Held on the knife rack. This film was released, oddly enough, in August. And there's the knife missing. Halloween would have been the appropriate time to release it, but no, they felt August was a good time. August 19th, I think it was. And I do remember going to the theaters and hearing the people scream. So that was a real bonus. And, you know, coming out, being taken out to Los Angeles and being put up by the studio and all, it was really great. It was a great experience for a filmmaker who had just made it. This was my first film. And, you know, it was a nice send-off. And the next picture was with, you know, Billy Friedkin, developed it. And then when we were just ready to start shooting, he got very ill and he wasn't able to continue. And Edgar and Joe took it over and produced it, The Killing Hour, and that was put out by 20th Century Fox under the title The Clairvoyant, and then later released on cable again as The Killing Hour. And Elizabeth Kemp, who was at the house a moment ago with the scene with the knives, was starring in that with Perry King. Now you'll see Bob D'Amelia and George Manassi. That's Bob D'Amelia with the white hat. Typical New York. There's George Manassi. That's all of us ad-libbing. And here's the
obligatory
nude scene put in by the producers. So we said, what are we going to do? We'll redo Psycho. Let's do Psycho without the stabbing. And of course, I never got the shot. I got the side angle instead of the straight-on shot of the water coming at you. We didn't have the fan on the lens like they did, you know, to deflect the water. But here we go, a series of similar shots like Hitchcock did.
There was no reason for this scene except for this.
Why would she decide to take a shower when she's just ready to smoke some pot and
to drain,
listen to music, which was a great concept you had about having the headphones on?
Amy?
The composers wrote the song, and we used it. Again, buying the rights to some of these songs we would have loved to use was so prohibitive. That's another thing, you know, when you're making films, you got to be so aware of that. Sure, you want to use a well-known song, but you know, when I made the Linda McCartney story, we got to use a lot of the Beatles songs, but we had to have them re-recorded. We were able to buy the rights to I Want to Hold Your Hand and She Loves You, and I forgot what the other one was. But they were re-recordings by another group because to use the actual Beatles song would have been, you know, phenomenally expensive. Plus, then we used songs by The Doors, Jimi Hendrix, and the Rolling Stones. And so that was a major portion of our budget. Here's the fish tank with all the famous fish. It's running a little faster than 70, and then 33. So here's the concept of increasing the volume and totally shutting out any other sound in the room. And she's already smoking pot, so she's going to get a little paranoid.
You're the only one who makes me feel.
I think the volume should have been up more.
Oh, it is. It does come up. I mean, in the theater, it was pumping, especially when she takes it off because she senses something, like you thought you heard something. Of course, she puts them back on, and the sound goes up, and you hear nothing else. Keep cutting to the fish tank. At this point in the theater, people were really screaming because they just knew something was up. They knew the knife was missing. They knew he was in the house. It was just when is he going to come? And that's the suspense that you play with. And the fact that she's oblivious to anything else now because she's stoned and music is carrying it. Now, in another movie, you would have seen the head come off. But we chose to be discreet. I think there's a lot of fun in this because you don't quite know what's about to happen. And that's part of the game in these films, is try to keep ahead of the audience. So they're sitting there waiting like, oh my God, what's going to happen next? Now we know the guy's in the house. We just saw him there and she's running in because she felt she was being followed, right? And she locks herself in. People were screaming here, what are you doing? And what we chose to do here on the soundtrack is to play an odd sound, a bubbling sound. We had to have that head made by one of the prosthetic houses that would design these latex faces. Elizabeth, I believe, sat there and had her cast done. And this starts the big chase sequence.
What was it, a discussion how fast he should move?
Yeah,
I remember we talked about
cutting,
that.
how close do you get him? Now people, of course, are jumping and screaming in their seats here at this. I mean, I witnessed this in every theater I went to. Because it's that sense of get away, get away. Everybody's with her at this point. And what happens? She can't find her keys. But the door's unlocked. Boom, lock it just in time.
Where are my keys? Where are my keys? Oh, no! No! Oh, my God! No!
keys. Get the fucking keys. She's. It's the first time, only time we use the word in the film.
God damn it!
This is us driving at night with that stupid board that we created. Where do you go when you're in trouble, huh? To the morgue from Marvin. Thank God there's nobody around chasing or anything. This was a fake fist that we used to break the glass, and then made a quick cut to the real hand.
That was Bob driving the car from the distance.
Of course, she hit a pole, and he's off the car, but there he is getting up again. He was a nasty guy. Nicest guy in the world to talk to, though, huh?
Yes.
Tom was a really nice guy. Oh, there's a moment coming up here which I didn't plan, but I remember seeing this with an audience, and they were screaming. And I said, wow, I never thought of that. You know, I can't take credit for it, but it just happened. She goes in, and we know the guy's out there someplace, and Marvin's doing his night job.
Hey, what is it? What's the matter?
He's after me, Marvin. He's trying to kill me. He killed Nancy.
Wait, what are you talking about?
The man that I saw through the window, do you remember? He's after me. He's here. He's trying to kill me.
Amy, we've been through all this before. Nobody's after you. Nobody's trying to kill you. There's nobody... Oh, shit. You mean this whole thing's been on the level?
Yes. What are we going to do?
Do? You're gonna call the police. I'm gonna go check it out. I'll be right back.
Oh, no, Marvin, please be careful.
You don't have to tell me that. I'll be right back.
This is the moment when he leaves.
Call the cops.
She's standing there by this window, and people started screaming, get away from the window, get away from the window. And I never thought of that. I never thought that window was because they were waiting for something to happen. And that's not even Don. I think that was my AD, Costa. We did that shot another day. This place was really creepy shooting in there. Now, why don't people stay where they're told?
Because it's a horror movie.
He's wandering around. Obviously the same hallway, just redressed.
This is Gamble.
It was lit.
I'm at the residence of an Amy Jensen.
Of course, the cops are always behind.
42 Warden. There's been a homicide.
Did you say Jensen?
That's right.
And Amy Jensen just called from the morgue and said that someone was trying to kill her.
What the hell is
As I recall, we shot this pretty well out of sequence. I mean, it was what was available at the time. I mean, when we had a location that was available, that's what we shot.
Weather forced us into some other locations when we couldn't shoot outdoors.
Right, there was some snow in that last shot, and you know, sometimes things didn't match, but in most cases, movies are shot totally out of sequence anyway. So, the rare time that you get that opportunity, it's really wonderful because then the actors grow with the piece, as you do. I believe this is what leads us into those. Oh no, this is the morgue. Sound cuts like that would jolt people, in the audience, because everything was so quiet, and then suddenly the screeching tires coming in.
And this is where we try to play with the expectations of him coming to the rescue.
Yes. See, a lot of this is so familiar to people today, but back then, I mean, it just really worked. It scared a lot of people. A lot of people told me they had nightmares over this movie. They just, And she sees her best friend. That's the poster, actually, for the movie. That became one of the shots in the poster. These are the tunnels. Really frightening. I'm telling you, you turn one way and look down a dark corridor, and then there's another corridor, pipes and enormous dust all over the place. Every time we walked, you'd kick up dust, and you'd be breathing it.
Is the hospital still there, or did they rip it down?
I don't think so. I think they've
built over it.
Built over it, and I think, yeah. So interesting how light plays such an important part in these films, and the areas that are lit as opposed to the areas that are unlit, and what's in those. It's like what's in the dark there, But seeing him come down that hallway, having nowhere to turn, she's. Would have been easy for him to say, like, you know what? He gets bored with trying to kill her and moves on. But he had to succeed. He had to fulfill his mission. This is the poster. This close-up on her now. This became right there. I think this part became the shot in the poster. We blocked that whole tunnel up. Most of the times that was a real knife that we used. On some of the stabbings, I think we might have used a plastic knife. Or retractable knife it might have been. I don't remember. I believe we did this on a wheelchair, and some of it was handheld. The idea to keep him always just a couple of feet behind her. Oh, and this, he had like a cast on his arm there, so that was a real knife she was stabbing him with, because we didn't have a fake one there. police to the rescue. That is the exterior of the morgue at Seaview.
It's okay. It's all right. It's over now.
Get it in there now?
Yeah.
She's so cute.
All right, just... Oh, wait a minute. Ow! Hold it. Okay.
This ending was kind of a last-minute thing.
We just pulled this together.
Just like the title, it kept on changing.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, I'm ready.
At one point, I had wanted the killer to be death, not as much motivation as he's given here. And the ending was him walking out of town, and there would have been some words on the screen, death walks, and then a bus pulls up, and he gets on it. Sometimes he takes a bus. Because I wanted to keep, when I was writing it, I tried to keep my tongue in cheek most of the time.
Now, of course, here it's the guy she was supposed to marry.
What are you doing here?
I must say that the experience of making this film was very enlightening for, I believe, all of us.
Yes, it was.
And it provided me with the opportunity to continue making films. And here we are 25 years later, and, done quite a few films. And it's a learning experience every time you make one. And I feel very fortunate to have been able to make this picture, and I thank the people who were involved: Edgar Lansbury, Joe Baru, Bob D'Amelio, George Manassi, Scott Parker, all the people that contributed to this, and of course the cast, the wonderful cast, people who stood in the cold at night for me. I wonder, Scott, is there any room for "He Still Knows You're Alone"?
I think we said it all in this thing, in this film.
So.
That's
It's funny. Somebody did ask me the other day, "Hey, can we remake that?" All the songs here were written by Alexander and Mark. Well, thank you very much for listening.
Thank you.
And see you at the movies.